Salut YouTube, and welcome back to another episode of Not Even French, which is the destination for Francophile related content, French culture, French language, and a little bit of New Zealand culture in there too. So today's video is all about the power of hindsight, because I've been thinking about, if I could do it all again. I lived in France for 6 years, but what do I wish I had known at the start of all of that, at the start of that journey, that would have helped to set me up for success or just avoid some awkward encounters or whatever it may be. What do I wish that I knew before moving to France? And in making this video, I hope that I'm going to help some of you who have plans to move to France or have just arrived recently to help you avoid some of the mistakes that I made, or just some of the things that would have made my life easier had I had known it from the beginning. Because yes, there are a lot of stereotypes out there about the French culture and a lot of information out there, but honestly, the culture is complex and multifaceted, and there are all sorts of things that you discover upon moving there that you just never ever heard of before. It's one of the reasons actually that I started my Not Even French channel to begin with. So I'm really excited to dive into these points today, but first I wanted to give you a gift. So this video is in collaboration with Skillshare, and if you don't know Skillshare, it's an online learning community with thousands of classes covering all sorts of topics, almost anything that you can imagine. You can get upskilled on things like graphic design, becoming a freelancer, email marketing, photography, digital marketing, UX design, creative writing, entrepreneurship, all sorts of awesome stuff. And when you have the premium membership, you have unlimited classes, you can join communities, and you can be constantly upskilling. And I know that this is really important at the moment for people, especially job hunting, preparing for interviews. For example, if they say that you need to know the basics of email marketing and you haven't quite worked in that yet, you can quickly upskill so that you can talk their language in the interview. So it's really great for your CV. It's really great for upskilling yourself for job hunts and for your career in general. And also just if you have a love of learning, or if you want to start a business or start making money on the side as a freelancer in some kind of side hustle. Basically everything that you could imagine learning is on the platform. So as a career coach, a couple of my clients are actually starting up podcasts recently, and I have sent them an awesome class that I came across myself, which is called Podcasting Secrets: How to Start Your Own Podcast. And that's by Nicola Matthews-Ocombe, and she's actually from the podcast Side Hustle Pro, which I love. So that one's super awesome if that interests you. I'm also personally doing a class at the moment on personal branding by Kate Arends, and it's all around crafting your social media presence around a personal brand. And this is not just for a personal brand as in someone who creates content like me, but also your online brand as any professional out there, which is so important. And even though the membership is incredibly affordable as it is, like an annual membership is less than $10 a month for non-stop learning, growth, fun, upskilling, all that kind of stuff. So that's really cheap anyway. But because Skillshare is sponsoring this video, you can click the link in my description box down below. And by doing so, the first 1,000 people to click the link will have access to a free 7-day trial of Skillshare Premium. It's going to be awesome. You can cancel at any time. You do not have to pay a thing. You start your 7-day free trial, see how you go, and if you love it, you can of course keep investing in yourself through Skillshare Premium. I mean, why not spend your time learning something new and becoming a better version of you? So with all that said and done, let's jump into the things that I wish I knew before moving to France. The first thing I wish I knew, the first thing I wish that someone had just told me, is that no doesn't always mean no. This is especially true in administrative settings or in sort of post offices, anytime that there's a customer service interaction as well. No doesn't always mean no. When they say no, or when they say c'est pas possible, it's not possible, that does not mean that it's time to give up. Au contraire, it's time to get your scrappy on. So I encountered this quite a bit where, especially with La Poste, I have a real relationship with La Poste. So basically for things like my birthday, right? Friends and family would send over packages, and I would get a little card saying that they had arrived in the post office. I'd go to the post office and they would tell me it's not there, they can't find it, and they certainly can't do anything about it. So I would go back home crying because I really wanted to see what my mum got me for my birthday. I really was looking forward to these care packages from home. I felt so bad that they'd spend all that money buying a gift or putting together a care package, sending it over, and it just got lost. I'd feel terrible. And my French boyfriend was just like, well, why don't you just ask them to look again? Why don't you just stay there and say it's here until they give you your package? And I was like, that's not me. I wouldn't do that, you know? But you have to. You absolutely have to fight for things sometimes. And so I got pretty good at being like, oh, it is here. I've got the proof. I've got a piece of paper. It's here. You haven't finished looking. Please try again. You know, respectful, but like you have to kind of push for it sometimes for them to do their job. And so I wish I had known that from the beginning, because that's true in many things. It's true even in the professional context. So if you pitch an idea and they say no, it's not over. It's time to discuss. It's time to question why. It's time to challenge their assumptions. It's time to do all sorts of things except to give up. Because no or pas possible does not always mean no. And this is true for the prefecture as well. If you're getting your visa, if they tell you like, no, it's not possible to get this, you have to have 5 years in France and you've only had 2. Like, pull up that website, pull up that official information. I mean, you fight for your rights in France, and that's okay. And if they're telling you no, or it's not possible, and you know it is, or you know it's true, or you know it is possible, or you want to try and find a solution, go for it, because no is not the end of the story. The next thing I wish I knew is that the French language takes a long time to learn that language, and don't beat around the bush. Like, just spend the goddamn money. Like, just get a tutor or invest in an online language school like Lingoda. Like, I mean, just do what you need to do, but be guided by someone. I was so stubborn. I was like, you know, everyone's telling me, oh, you'll just arrive in France and you'll pick up a language like that and you'll be fluent in 3 months. And it doesn't work like that. It really doesn't, especially if, like me, your studies or your workplace is actually in English, like your actual day-to-day job was in English. And so I was so afraid of putting money to it. I was like, oh, why am I paying for something that I'll eventually absorb for free? And it's like, do you want this to take you 1 year or 4? The next thing I wish I knew is just start making French friends early. It takes a long time to foster relationships and to get into established friendship circles, if it ever happens. You usually have to sort of live through something with a French person or share a common experience or project to really become a friend. And this kind of thing can take time. And I remember sort of staying in my safety bubble, you know, my comfort zone with other expats and other English speakers for a very long time. My program at university was very international and I took comfort in that. Basically, I was lacking confidence. And like, I tell myself things like, oh, when I speak French, I'll try to establish more relationships with French people, because then they won't get annoyed by me. Or when I'm more cultured, when I know more, when I'm this, when I'm that, then I'll be interesting enough, then I'll be cool enough, then I'll be whatever enough. And I think this is a real shame, because I did only have a few French friends and they took me a while to get. And when I mean friends, I mean like friends, not like acquaintances, people you take a drink with, but like you can tell them anything friends. And I just wish I had started earlier and gotten over that like I'm not enough mentality. I know when you go somewhere new, it's like even when you start a new job or something, you see other people around you who have so many things that you don't have yet, or whatever it is, and you're always thinking about what you don't have or what you can't bring to the table. And I definitely encourage myself looking back to actually be like, you know, you've got some cool stories to tell. You're different. You're from a different country. You know, you can practice French and they can practice English. Like, think about all the things you can bring to the table. Think about all the ways you're a great person and a great friend, and that's needed as well. And just sort of being a bit more confident around making French friends, because it does take time. Another thing I wish I knew is that for a lot of French people, those beautiful patisseries that you see in the boulangerie, those beautiful cakes, they look like absolute works of art, right? That tarte au citron, all glossy and with the meringue, and like there are some beautiful, beautiful cakes and pastries in France. And yes, I love them. And yes, my nickname in France was La Petite Gourmande, which means like the little greedy. What I wish I knew is that French people don't eat that stuff every day. So I went over there, I was really excited that French people ate dessert with every meal, lunch and dinner, woohoo! And so I would get that crème brûlée, I would get that mousse au chocolat, I would get that millefeuille, I would get so many exciting things. And I remember my manager actually pulled me aside and said to me, you know what, Rosie, you know how you take a full-on dessert, like a cake, you know, every single day? And I was like, yep, vive la France. And she was like, we don't do that. So we end the meal on something sweet, but it's usually some fruit or a yogurt, you know, something a little. And I was like, oh, are you trying to tell me that I'm gonna get fat if I keep eating this stuff? It's just kind of like, yeah, like French women, okay, they work, I wouldn't say they work hard to maintain their figures, but they're strict about the way that they eat, and that they've learned over time through the culture, through their upbringing, about portion size and about control around food. Like, I don't see any French woman binge eating over there or eating cakes every day. And so I definitely wish I had known that, you know, that wasn't the thing, because, you know, then I would also stop comparing myself to, I'm like, how do French women eat this stuff all the time and stay so slim? And I can't. It's like, actually, because they're not eating like you are, like you're eating like a cake a day. And also, I wish I knew that, because like I got kind of, you know, used to it and addicted to it, and I couldn't stop. Like once you pop, you can't stop, you know? And so it was very difficult for me to wean myself off these beautiful cakes every day. They're so cheap and so beautiful and so delicious. I was just like, why wouldn't you? But now if I don't have something really cakey and sweet after like my lunch, like your girl gets a bit hangry. So that was a habit that I picked up in France that was a bit exaggerated based on the base culture. And yeah, I wish I had just like been satisfied with some plain yogurt. You know, they ate like the plain yogurt nature, maybe add a little bit of jam to it or something like that. Probably would have saved me a lot of calories. So the next thing I wish I knew is, Rosie, like speaking to my past self, don't be naive. Coming from New Zealand, I was like, oh, I'll be fine. Like, oh, they say pickpockets exist, like whatever. That's probably just like 1 in a million chance. And you know, I'd have my handbag open on the metro. I'd put my handbag behind me on a chair while I was eating dinner and not even think twice about it. And honestly, that's just kind of silly. That kind of stuff does exist. And another place where I wouldn't be naive was around sexual harassment. So I got warned that there's a lot of sexual harassment, and also like on the metros and crowded spaces and things like that as well in France. And I was just like, whatever, like, don't be, you know, over the top. I'm sure it's not like that. I'm sure people don't do that. That kind of like Kiwi attitude in me. And I actually had a really horrible incident on the metro. It was on the line 13, which is, if you know Paris, you know that it's absolutely slammed in peak hour. You're like sardines in that metro line. And I had a man, a professional looking man with a briefcase and everything, just really shoved up against me. And he put his hand right up my skirt and grabbed me. So I guess I would just say, like, look, these things do happen, so you might as well be better safe than sorry, right? So just don't be naive. That kind of thing does happen. Like, just have your wits about you a little bit more. Another thing that I wish I knew before coming to France is actually studying up on New Zealand, because, you know, what you realize as an expat when you move to France is that they expect you to know everything about your country's history, art, politics, geography, everything. The French are real seekers of general knowledge and facts. They want to pick apart, you know, your grammar, your voting system, like all of these like details, all of this general knowledge. And so like I remember the French people asking me things like, so how tall is your highest mountain and what's the length of the country? How many people are on the South Island versus how many people are on the North Island of New Zealand? And all of these kinds of things. And when I didn't know, I looked a little bit like an idiot. So I wish I did know that kind of stuff. And I had a little bit more general knowledge and facts up my sleeve to impress the French. This point is important. Don't throw out administrative documents. Oh my gosh. So whenever I would receive a bank statement in France, I just throw them out. I'd be like, whatever, they'll be online anyway. And apparently you don't do that. I got in trouble when I couldn't provide bank statements and bank slips going back all the way for a relationship visa that I needed to prove with my partner. And I needed to have all sorts of documentation, and they were like, oh, why are the first 5 months of your bank statements missing? And by the way, it was only 5 months, because when Niels found out that I was throwing them out, he was like, you don't do that. Like, every piece of paper that you receive throughout your lifetime in France, you keep and you put it in a safe space. So a folder. And so he has like all these like manila folders full of paperwork, and you think you can just throw it out, but you can't. You never know. You never know when you might need to buy a house and provide a bank statement from January and February for the past 5 years or whatever it might be, but you'll probably need that piece of paper. And the online versions aren't as like legitimate And so it can really get you in trouble. So just keep all the paperwork you receive. Another thing is that you can't dress up in France like you dress up in New Zealand. So fake tan out, hair color out, short skirts out, showing lots of skin, showing cleavage out, showing lots of leg out. like basically, you know, cover up more, less is more, natural hair, quite natural makeup. That's going to be much more well received in France. You know, when you're going out with the girls, it is not an occasion to put on heels and short dresses and do that kind of Anglo-Saxon look of the party girl, because in France you may actually be perceived as a lady of the night. Another thing that I wish I knew, because it could have avoided me some like near arguments in public, is that you will be scolded like a little child even though you're a grown-ass woman. So the French are opinionated, they have opinions on everything, and if you are making too much noise, like they will, you know, turn back and be like, shh, on the train, like they will give you the death stare. I've seen it with people with their kids quietly playing and getting excited because they're coloring in, and other French people in the carriage being like, shh, and like telling the parents like, take control of your children. Basically, like if you line up wrong, if you do something wrong, like you will hear about it. And that's kind of normal, like it's fair game to like tell people off. And like if you sit in the wrong place, or like what if you do something in the bus, whatever it is, but like it's actually fair game in France for adults to tell adults off and scold each other. And I found that really weird, but it's definitely a thing. Another thing I wish I knew is that sometimes you will hate France, you will despise France, especially Paris. And it's not always the fault of the city or the country. Detach bad things that are happening to you, life problems, personal problems, with geographical problems. Yes, sometimes being based in a certain place, there's particular things that happen in that location, or things that happen, you know, back home that make it harder, that you're away and all of that kind of thing. But detach it being a France problem from a you problem. Another thing I would say is that your partner's going to become your everything, your translator, your administrative coach, your life coach, helping you to set up everything, your bank, your finances, and you're going to need to rely on them a lot. And it's going to be really hard. This is if you're like obviously, you know, moving abroad for your partner, which is very, very common. And you have to create a life outside of this. You can't, like, they can't be your everything, and you can't hide behind them either. At some point, you're going to need to take charge of your own life over there and be brave and put yourself out there and just make sure that you appreciate all the work that they're doing for you and all the ways in which they're supporting you through your transition. And bit by bit, as soon as you possibly can, get your independence. The last but certainly not least thing that I wish I knew before moving to France is that it would be the best thing I ever did in my life for myself, for my growth, for my career, for so many things, for my brain, for my expansion, for everything. So yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable and it's going to be hard, but lean into it. It means that you're growing, it means that you're expanding, it means that good things are happening. And if you embrace the discomfort, it's going to be one of the best rides of your life. So guys, if you have yourself moved to France, I would love to hear from you what you wish you knew before moving to France yourself. And otherwise, if you've moved abroad before, what parts of this conversation resonated with you the most? I'm really looking forward to seeing what you have to say in the comment section down below. And otherwise, I'll catch you guys here next week on the Not Even French channel. A bientôt!